Okay, thank you. And item 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest to make at this stage, please? Now, you know the ropes. If you become aware of anything as we go through the agenda, please let it be known as soon as you're aware of it. That then brings us to the minutes of the council meeting of Tuesday the 7th of January. Are you all happy that it's an accurate account of what took place? Can you all please show?
Carried.
And are there any matters arising not otherwise covered in this evening's agenda? None. Thank you. That brings us to item 4, public representations and questions. We haven't received any, but I'm pleased to see some members of the Neighbourhood Development Plan Steering Group in the public gallery. Very fine name for that row of seats. I wondered whether any of you wish to say anything, because we will be considering the NDP later on in the agenda, but by the time we get to that point, I won't be at liberty to invite you to comment. Is there anything you wanted to say?
Well, just to thank you for your support, and I know that Councillor Mann will be having something to say later, but thank you anyway.
Okay, thank you. Items requiring a decision. Neighbourhood Development Plan. To consider the report of the Town Clerk in connection with the progression of the Neighbourhood Development Plan for Tavistock and associated documents. Now, members, as I understand it, the stage we're at the moment, the next step is very much in the hands of the local planning authority. And we actually are not entitled to make any comment at this stage, but we have been invited to do so, should we wish to. And what we're being asked to do is to consider the examiner's amendments, and if we do, to endorse them and to recommend to the local planning authority that the neighbourhood development plan goes to referendum. Who would like to open the discussion? Councillor Mann.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say the good news in the report that everybody's seen is that we received the green light to proceed to referendum. Thank you to the steering group and to many individuals on the councils and the community who helped us reach this point. This is particularly good timing because there is so much change happening in local government, and there's a big focus on the provision of more affordable housing coming. There's plenty of scope for applying the provisions of the plan to shape any housing applications presented. Following the examination, the provisions in the plan carry already some great weight. So I was very glad to see that DML mentioned the plan in relation to the proposed changes to the facilities of the Alexander Centre in the minutes that are going to be presented later tonight. As always, the Town Clerk's report makes the most of the points that I would cover, so I'm not going to go through those. I understand that Councillor Parker might have an amendment to offer tonight to do with the process of monitoring the plan following the adoption of referendum and over the lifetime of the plan. And I welcome that amendment and will accept it. The plan should continue to be improved over its life, and the planning world has changed dramatically since 2021, when we as a council chose to undertake the neighbourhood plan. Neighbourhood plans are meant to be living documents responsive to the needs of the community, and I agree with the DML committee is the right vehicle for the work as councillors to be done. So on that note, that's what I wanted to say. For some of the newer councillors who might have looked at this document and gone, what is this all about? I wanted to just point out that strategic allocations for housing across the planning area are generally done by the local planning authority. And as such, whenever you do get to the point as a DML committee to considering the plan, you should try to do that in collaboration with the local planning authority. And really, that's all I wanted to say, other than to say that there's nothing within the examiner's report that I think would stop us from moving forward. It's essentially the same document with a few small changes. So I hope that I can move the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Mann intimated, I'd like to propose an amendment to the report. I'd like to start by saying that the purpose of the amendment is to move things forward, not to slow down the adoption of the neighbourhood plan at all. I've read every word in the examiner's report, and I'm personally happy with the recommendations and will vote in favour of them. I also commend the work that Councillor Mann and Stephen have done on preparing this plan. It wasn't an easy situation, and I think they've done a splendid job. Now, the amendment is, as I notified yourself, Mr. Mayor and the Town Clerk over the weekend, for the benefit of other members, it's as follows. And it comes to add a recommendation C, to request the Development Management and Licensing Committee to advise the Council on the likely requirements for housing in Tavistock during the lifetime of the neighbourhood plan, and to advise on the options for meeting the requirements. Now, I'll read that out again at the end if necessary. But the reasoning for this actually flows from the examiner's report itself. The Development Management and Committee has been tasked with monitoring the plan. That's right and proper, and we'll do that in due course after the referendum. However, the examiner made two comments that I believe we need to take into account now and not wait for the referendum. The first is that the law required her to examine the plan under the terms of the 2023 National Plan Policy Framework. There's nothing to criticise about that, it's simply how the government rules apply to her work. But it's hugely important to Tavistock because it means that she wasn't able to take into account the 2024, that in 2024 the government almost trebled the housing requirements for West Devon from 160 homes per year to over 440 a year. The second point is that she advised that there's a risk, and I'm going to quote her here because I think it's a really well-balanced statement. There is a risk associated with not making housing site allocations in the plan, as it may result in speculative applications in locations which are not considered appropriate. And these could be successful if the local planning authority has an inadequate housing plan supply. She also referred to the provision to make a revision to the neighbourhood plan after its adoption. The fact is that West Devon now agrees that they don't have a 5-year land supply. So what the examiner warned us about is now a very real risk. As it stands, the neighbourhood plan tells the people of Tavistock there's no need for new housing in the town. That was true in relation to the 2023 government policy, and it's understandable why the plan says this. However, in 2025, we now know that Tavistock and the whole of West Devon will need to accommodate a considerable amount of new housing. The question is, how much? Now, my estimate is that it will be well over 1,000 houses in the next 10 years, about double what we've had to accommodate in the whole of the joint local plan period. That's a guess. It's an informed guess, but it could be less, it could be more. I believe the worst thing we can do right now is to do nothing. At the very least, I think the people of Tavistock will expect us as the council promoting neighbourhood planning to have a handle on the scale of development that we can expect. I've no doubt that West Devon Council is well advanced in thinking about this, and the purpose of this amendment is simply to ask the DM committee, hopefully working alongside and with and in the same direction as our borough council colleagues, to seek out the actual information and to recommend a course of action to be agreed by the two councils. That will help us to ensure that those who we represent are kept informed and have the opportunity to contribute to the process. It won't affect the progress of the neighbourhood plan, but it will help to make sure that future developments don't take the town by surprise. Mr. Mayor, I move the amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. So the amendment has been moved. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Jeff Moody, in
Yeah.
which case would you like to debate it?
Can I just ask, because was the main motion moved? Because we didn't have a seconder for that. I think I moved the motion.
Okay,
I wasn't going to say, I almost, you didn't second it as well.
so do we have a seconder for the main motion? Councillor Mrs Johnson.
You can't amend it with
Okay.
it not on the table.
So we have to take the amendment first. And so we've got it's been proposed, it's been seconded, it's open for debate. Members, over to you. Yeah, Councillor Mrs Ewings.
I would just like to query a couple of things that Councillor Parker has said. The number of housing that you talked about, that's not just for Tavistock, that's for West Devon Borough Council.
That's what I said.
I thought you said Tavistock. I do apologise because you said it was part of the neighbourhood plan. So, yes, you know, it doesn't have to be built in Tavistock. So I wouldn't like to see any scaremongering against anyone for that because they may not need to be here. They may be able to go elsewhere. And I hope they will. Not that I'm against building in Tavistock, she hastily adds. I think that we do need to thank Councillor Mann for her grit, determination, her absolute just enthusiasm, etc. for this plan. She's had a brilliant team, and I've written to them separately, to their secretary, to say what a fantastic job they've done. They've stuck with it where others haven't. And the main group of the team has really stuck together, which has been fantastic to see. And as we know, and from the town clerk, when he used to give us his warnings, and is known in, not the press, but, you know, government speak, that so many steering groups just fall apart and some neighbourhood plans can take over 10 years to get there. Councillor Mann was not having any of that. Councillor Mann was doing everything by said date. And she has done it. And today I have agreed that it needs to go forward, because it was nearly moved today on the hub agenda, but I have said no, it needs to go forward to the March meeting, where I hope that West Devon endorse it going out for referendum. So thank you to Councillor Mann, and thank you to her team who've stuck by her, probably had to pick her up a few times along the way when she's had enough and she feels like the whole world's against her, because she has been made to feel like that on occasions, as have some of you. And I truly hope that some of the issues from the plan, particularly young people's issues, do come to the fore, and that Tavistock Town Council look at this plan and use it. I would like everybody to be what we're all supposed to be with the joint local plan, that you take it to bed and it's your bedtime reading, because we should all understand this document, and this is for Tavistock. And with Councillor Parker's amendment, it means that the DML committee of Tavistock Town Council keep a beady little eye on this plan, and as things go forward, there may need to be alterations. And to be really honest, I hope there are not going to be alterations made for the making's sake, that it is something that comes in as government guidelines, government policy or whatever. I don't want to see it just merge because it doesn't suit anybody's particular view, because that has been through that process already. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions, please? Councillor Jeff Moody.
Just as a point of order, are we going to vote? I believe Councillor Mann has accepted the amendment, so it then becomes the substantive motion, and we'll be voting on the ABC. Is that correct?
Does that not depend on whether any of the other members around the table have something to say about it?
What's been accepted?
I didn't repeat my acceptance at the point of it being moved on purpose in case my colleagues didn't agree. I didn't feel like that was fair for me to do so, so I thought we could hear the debate, but I'm not opposed to the amendment.
Yeah, thank you. Does anyone else have anything to say before I say what I want to say? Okay. I'm not opposed in principle to the amendment, but I would question the wording slightly. So, for example, the point has already been made. I mean, what we're doing here is asking DMNL committee to do something that it hasn't historically done in the past. I actually think there are three tasks that fall out of the making of the NDP. The first one is that members of DML need to be familiar with it. They need to look at it and consider it when considering applications. They need to be looking at decisions and making sure that decision notices and officers' reports have taken account of the NDP and appropriately recognised the content of the NDP and how it applies to that application. In other words, we're monitoring the implementation of it. And then we have this. And I think when it comes to this paragraph, I think it should include somewhere in it that actually there needs to be collaboration with the local planning authority, and that's been mentioned. So I could imagine it saying something along the lines of request the DMNL committee in collaboration with the local planning authority to advise the council on the likely requirements for housing in the Tavistock neighbourhood development plan area during the lifetime of the plan, and to advise on the options for meeting these requirements. So I'm suggesting inserting in collaboration with the local planning authority, and just more tightly defining the word Tavistock, which so it specifically says the Tavistock neighbourhood development plan area. Councillor Parker.
Thank you. I never have any objection to amendments that improve what I've written, so I'd be perfectly happy to accept that amendment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Ewings? Okay, thank you. I just need to check on procedure, bear with me.
Yes, there's been no objection, so effectively the amendment's been incorporated into the substantive motion, and there's been no objection to what you said, so that is now incorporated into items.
Fine. So, the amended amendment is now incorporated into the substantive motion. We have a proposer and seconder for the substantive motion. Are there any other further comments before we go to the vote? So in casting a vote, you are commending this to the local planning authority to go forward to a referendum subject to the examiner's recommended modifications. All in favour? Show.
Carried.
Thank you, members.
No, that was
Excellent. So, now we move on to item 6, Council Budget and Precept. Now, you will have to bear with us slightly as we go through this item, because it's partially covered in the minutes of the B&P committee, and it's partially covered here on the agenda as written. So, bear with us as we work our way through it, and forgive, particularly me, if I get into a muddle. Hopefully I won't. So it is that time of the year again when we have to set the budget and the precept, and the clerk has set out in outline on the agenda what the principal headlines are and the figures. And if you still have access to the B&P documentation, there is more detail supplied there. So I'm going to take little a and little b separately. So you are first being asked to consider and agree the schedule of fees and charges 25-26, and I move that. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, thank you. And do you wish to debate it? I'll take that as a no, in which case all in favour please show.
carried.
Okay, so moving on to 6, little b, the draft budget and precept for Tavistock Town Council for 25-26. And just for the benefit of any people watching from home, this will involve an increase of 7.32%, equating to 29 pence per week for a Band D equivalent property. And we wish to point out the precept is calculated as comprising 4.82% general increase plus an additional 2.5% increase to meet the new costs imposed through changes to employers' national insurance contributions. Now, my understanding is that town and parish councils do not get any relief for the additional cost of employers' national insurance contribution, whereas principal authorities do. And therefore, the decision was, the decision of BNP was to recommend to Council that we itemise the general increase and the hypothecated increase required to meet the national insurance contribution separately, coming to a total of 7.32%. There is a revised budget summary, including council tax base and a copy rolling capital programme attached. Those were in your bundle. So I'm going to propose that we agree to 6B, the draft budget and precept, taking account of notes Roman 1, 2 and 3. Do I have a seconder? Okay, thank you. Members, do you wish to debate? The floor is yours. Councillor Parker.
It's just a question for the town clerk. I personally am appalled that the level of government that can least afford the NI increase is offered no support. Is that still something that's open for discussion through DALC, or is it a done deal?
The government have made very clear to the National Association of Local Councils that there will be no additional support for the town and parish council sector. I think the observation I would make is, whilst it does have a material impact upon us, and you can see that in the agenda papers, if you actually look at a lot of the smallest councils, because they employ part-time members of staff and the national insurance threshold was reduced as well, some of those are disproportionately affected in relation to very modest precepts.
Councillor Ewings and then Councillor Johnson.
I'd also like to say that West Devon Borough Council don't get all of their money back. We're only getting a third. It's about 67,000, and I think our bill is a lot more than that. So we're only getting a third back from the government. So actually it's, you know, we're being done to as well as the parishes and everyone else. And yesterday, when the final settlement was announced, West Devon's share, I was looking for an increase, saw nothing and said, what's the point of this? To be told we've got a 5,000 decrease because of national insurance. So we'd had another 5,000 taken away because of the national insurance said miscalculated how much authorities would have to pay, and they don't have the money to give us to us. So actually, some of the percentage that our money's gone up is around paying national insurance as well. So I think it's going to be the same for many, many companies and everything else, and businesses, particularly small businesses, that it's going to be very, very hard. The High Street is a very struggling place to start with, and to put, I want to say undue pressures, because it does feel a bit like undue pressures on small businesses, small, you know, councils and things like that, that actually we've just all got to keep paying out. I think the expression is we're not getting much bang for our bucks. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I find this situation with the increase in national insurance contributions particularly disappointing. When it was first announced in Parliament, Government Minister came out and said, don't worry, we'll compensate all councils for this increase. And I thought, oh, that's really good, because we don't get any money from the central government. But actually, we don't get anything from it. So I just think it's important to let our residents know that despite what's coming out from central government, it doesn't always hit us where we need it. I don't think the government's got very much understanding about towns and parishes, which I find particularly disappointing.
Thank you. Are there any other comments, please? In which case I ask you to vote to agree to Sorry?
Do we
good
have
one.
to have a recorded vote because this is our vote for the budget? We don't.
It's not a requirement to unless you,
That's up the
unless you
road you
request
do.
it.
Anything else? Okay, so I ask you to vote on whether we agree the draft budget and precept for Tavistock Town Council for 25-26. All those in favour, please show.
Carried.
Okay. Righto. There's one other, this is where I said it gets a bit confusing between the B&P minutes and this, this page. But if I could just refer you to 6 little a, where it says, and accompanying matters, including not to opt to tax the Town Hall or Guildhall at this time, minute number 277B refers, that's a B&P minute.
Correct.
Yes, as recommended by the Budget and Policy Committee. Now, I have to say this was outside my experience. I suspect it's outside some of yours, and I will therefore ask the Town Clerk to explain to us what that's about.
Yes, most of the activities and premises of the council are what is called opted to tax for VAT, value-added tax purposes. And that means that we can recover VAT in relation to those premises and activities, but we have to charge VAT in relation to them. There are certain premises which, for historic reasons, so the pannier market is not opted to tax, and that's a strategic decision the council's made, and it's made that on the basis that it would otherwise have to then charge VAT to traders, and part of what we look to provide is a modest cost option, if you like, for traders to be able to operate in the market, and adding 20% to that cost would be significant in terms of what the impact would be. The Town Hall has a mix of areas which are opted to tax and which aren't. Principally, what is not opted to tax is the space. So the letting of the hall or the letting of the Rundle Room is not opted to tax. If you actually buy services, that is opted to tax. But again, what that means is we're able to keep fees and charges down without actually having to charge for use of the main hall in the Town Hall or the Rundle Room to users. And then finally, the Guildhall was originally not opted to tax because we had a long-term tenant in situ in the form of Tavistock Heritage to Trust. We have since lost them, and there is potentially and there's a calculation that you've got to do based on reasonable apportionment, some tax liability that we incur in relation to the capital costs of the works. Now, at the moment, we anticipate that's going to be in the region of probably about £1,500 a year. We're taking some specific technical advice in relation to how to take that forward, and that's why the recommendation you've got in the Budget and Policy Committee minute, which relates to this, is to keep matters under review as we get some more information in relation to that. But at the moment, we're just seeking affirmation that we don't opt to tax either the Town Hall or the Guildhall at this stage, but that we, by the time we come to the budget later this year for next, that we bring that back with a fully formulated resolution, with a recommendation, with a full understanding of what the implications are, because at the point you make a decision to opt to tax, my understanding is you are then locked in for a period of at least 20 years. So it's a long-term decision, and we would want to get it right from that side of things.
Thanks for that, Jack Lotley. When I was running businesses, I was led to believe by the VAT man that the whole business was ready to attack or not. Are we treating then the Guildhall and Town Hall as if they were separate businesses to the Town Council?
Now, you're trying to draw me into an area where I have a significant lack of confidence, I have to say.
Looks like I've done it.
I think you have. The way in which the VAT regime operates is that there is something called a partial exemption. So every year, what happens is we will do all of our VAT returns for the areas that are vatable, and for where it applies. You then have a partial exemption amount, and I am going to have to look at Councillor Edelman because I can't remember. I think there is a baseline which is either £5,500 or £7,500 a year. I can't remember which. In our case, because of the mix of activities, it actually varies year on year. So I think last year it was around 12,750. So when you are, so if we have to do works on the town hall, and let's assume there was nothing else that fell into this category, then we can recover VAT up to that sum in relation to the town hall, because that's what our partial exemption calculation is. The point is, where goods and services are required to be VATable, then you're absolutely right. Everything has to be in. You're either opting to tax or you're not opting to tax, subject to the government's thresholds. In the case of lettings of land, particularly lettings of land under a licence, there is not a requirement for it to be VATable, and that is why the government has the partial exemption calculation, which can be brought into play at that time. But please don't ask me to go into more detail, because I'm going to get very, very confused.
Do you need a vote on that?
Yes, please.
Apparently, it would be helpful if we were to vote separately on that particular item. So you've heard the explanation, to tax or not to tax. Do you accept that recommendation? Those in favour, please show. Oh. Okay. Okay, thanks very much. Item 7, General Finance, Schedule of Payments, to consider and endorse the monthly accounts as at the 31st of December, the data being available for view on the website. Do you consider and endorse the monthly accounts? So, the proposer? Yeah, seconder, and all in favour? And B, Budget Monitoring Report, to consider and endorse the phased budget monitoring report as at 31st of December, and that forms part of your bundle. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Yes. And all in favour, please show.
Carried.
Thank you. Item 8, Budget and Policy Committee. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to present the minutes of the Budget and Policy Committee held on the 21st of January. I would just say, members, that as been pointed out by our Mayor, this is a little complex in the sense that some of the recommendations from the minutes have already been dealt with in the main agenda. So forgive me if I'll probably receive a nudge in the ribs as we go along if I've got this wrong. But we'll start with 274, apologies for absence, 275, confirmation of minutes, 276, declarations of interest. Items for recommendation, 277, finance. This was the interim expenditure review. Recommended that the Council acknowledge the potential for overspends on codes 4041, which is equipment hire, and 4046, which is equipment purchase, and, subject to ongoing monitoring, to restrict further expenditure so far as possible this year. Agree that they be funded at year end from any available underspends in other areas, with a primary focus on the property maintenance budget.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Would any of you like to ask any questions on that point? Would you like me to ask the clerk to explain it to you? Councillor Ewing.
I'd just like to ask a question around that. If we're hiring some of this equipment, with the changes to the weather and the regular flooding that's coming into Tavistock, should we actually be looking to purchase some of this equipment? I don't know what it is we hire, so whether it's something that costs 100,000 or whether it's something that costs 2 or 3, I've got no idea. But is it something we should be considering within our budgets going forward?
One for Wayne. Okay, Town Clerk, please.
Yeah, I think this was referenced at one of the earlier budget and policy meetings in terms of where we're at. It's certainly something I think which is appropriate to look at as we go into the next budget setting round. This year it was the exceptional circumstances and principally the hire of equipment for the flooding which took place in the basement of the town hall. So I think the answer is in terms of how we set our budgets, how we look to future-proof, to build resilience within our budgets and to anticipate changes that may occur. That's exactly the sort of thing that we could and should appropriately be looking at going forwards. On this occasion, these two elements are both here because there is an anticipated overspend and we are required by your financial regulations in order to bring those to members in order that A, you are apprised of them and B, you can take remedial action where necessary. But I think as we also look at the devolution agenda, which is going to be in some shape or form coming down the tracks and local government reorganisation this year, or the budget setting round for the financial year 26-27 is going to be a substantially different one, not least reflecting as well the fact that our overall budget position this year is challenging, and depending on where things go, as already flagged in previous reports, we may well find that the arrangements that we've been able to put in place to maintain a steady and low level of precept increase over the past few years become much harder to maintain going forwards. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Wayne.
I was going to say the shorter answer is yes.
Thank you.
We have actually recently purchased a dehumidifier, and what came out of the budget policy meeting is we would also add it as an agenda item on the sustainability review.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Did we have a proposer and seconder? I've forgotten already. I'll propose it.
I don't think
Seconder? Councillor Ewing. All in favour, please show.
Carried.
Okay.
So, moving on to item 277 Bravo. This is the Guildhall and Town Hall option to tax and treatment.
Councillor Mrs Ewing.
I'm really sorry, Councillor Hipsey, but you've missed out little D, the bank mandate. There's a recommendation there.
That's for, we haven't
got there yet.
We're
I
still...
thought you said 278.
No, it's
No,
277B.
277 Bravo. Okay, shall I move on? This one, I seem to remember, has been dealt with under the main agenda. So I think we can leave that one. It's already been accepted. So we're on to item Charlie. This is Guildhall and Town Hall fees and charges, which also has been dealt with in the main agenda. Then we move on, Councillor Ewings, to the bank mandate. So this is item Delta. Recommended that the changes are set out in para 2.1 of the report be received and adopted.
Okay, thank you. This is a simple administrative change. Basically, some of the existing signatories cease to be signatories and some others become signatories. And it's a process, it's a rolling process as people come in and out of office. So we have a recommendation that's been moved. I'm happy to second that. Are there any questions? In which case, all in favour, please show.
Carried.
Thank you.
So we move on to item 278, budget preparation and precept setting for 25-26, and as you'll remember, we have just done that as well. So we can move on to page 4, which concerns the Abbey Remains project, item 279. This is completely summarised in the General Manager's report that hopefully everybody has seen issued today. So we have a 6-part recommend here, which I don't intend to go through blow by blow. I'm going to assume that you've all read that, unless anybody desperately needs me to go through it. So we have items Alpha Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo and Foxtrot. Recommendations, Mr Mayor?
So, are you moving those recommendations?
Yes, indeed.
And do we have a seconder? Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker. And does anyone want to ask any questions? Councillor
I
Parker.
just want to make an observation and say well done, Wayne. Pulling all this together so quickly is phenomenal. Well done.
Thank you. In which case, all in favour, please show.
Carried.
Item 280, Goose Fair 2024. Recommendation here is that Tavistock Town Council award the sum of £2,000 to the Tavistock Lions Club in recognition of the organisation's contribution to the successful delivery of Goose Fair 2024.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, hands up. Councillor Munro. Okay, and Councillor Smith, ditto.
So I have to exclude from myself from the vote.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know how we do it without the Lions, and each year we do tend to award them a sum of money to say thank you, really, for all the work they do in managing the car parking and so on. I'm happy to endorse this, so it's been moved. I'll second it. And is everybody in favour? All happy?
Carried.
Item 281, Market Road Cottages, occupancy conditions. The recommendation here is that Tavistock Town Council agree the regional, sector and national definitions as set out in paras 2.1 to 2.3 of the report.
Okay, so do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Parker, any questions? All in favour, please show.
Carried.
Items circulated for information only, 282, devolution white paper. I draw your attention here to the third bullet, which concerns some discussion that was had about the changes in local authority structure, and the recommendation here, although this is only a item circulated for information, we have proposed a recommendation that Tavistock Town Council designate a working group comprised of members of the Budget and Policy Committee meeting on an informal basis to consider the implications of and preparation for the future impacts of the implementation of the white paper, with particular regard to the reorganisation of local government in Devon and how best to represent the interests of the ratepayers and community of the town.
Okay, thank you. Devolution is likely to have major implications for town and parish councils. At the moment, we don't know exactly what those implications are going to be. But if you look at parts of the country where they've become unitary authorities, Cornwall Council, for example, the implications for local councils have been really quite major. And really, this is all about horizon scanning and trying to anticipate what might be coming our way, being proactive about having some influence over what comes our way and being prepared for it. And so the suggestion is that the members of BNP will meet informally to horizon scan and discuss these sorts of things, and then reporting back through BNP to full council, we'll share our deliberations and where we can make recommendations, make them. So that's the thinking behind it. We feel that there is some urgency about this. Things are likely to happen quite fast, or they won't. Time will know sooner or later. But they could happen quite fast if Devon goes in the first tranche. Yes, quite. But if it does, things could happen very quickly. If it doesn't, it will be a bit more leisurely, I suppose. But that's the suggestion, and that's what is being recommended to you, that you endorse that recommendation. So it's been proposed. Councillor Munro?
I just think the wording there might be too restricted. If we're restricting to BNP members, but it makes sense for any member of the council to be able to be part of that.
Okay. Any other observations?
I was thinking the same thing, Mr. Mayor. whether it could be extended to interested parties by invitation, maybe.
Do you have a view?
I think, I mean, it's very much in the political arena as to what you consider to be appropriate arrangements. My suggestion would be, from where I've worked on projects like this before, is that whatever it is, that you start off with a core group of members who are tasked specifically with what it is you want them to do. Too large a group actually can become cumbersome in terms of what it does. The proposal as it is would give all members the opportunity to attend at budget and policy. All members would be making decisions at council, and I think there was a very clear conversation at budget and policy, which was that for lots of items there would be an open invitation to other members of council, as well as the potential that for some of the bigger ticket items there would potentially be informal meetings of all councillors in order to actually scope and understand views and opinions in terms of where things are. From an officer perspective, and having gone through this process elsewhere before, I think you do need to have a forum which is a closed forum at some point for people to speak the unspeakable and think the unthinkable, in order that you can actually deal with all the horizon scanning that the Mayor has spoken about. There are going to be some things which won't look as if they're achievable at the start, and as time goes on will become achievable. There will be some things which potentially are achievable, you think, but actually for whatever reason they don't happen. So I think what I would commend to you is, whatever the configuration is, have a core group who are doing the main work, if you like, have the facility for other members to join that, and then the other arrangements we've talked about, whether you feel this is the right group or you think a different group. Personal view, I think if you go much above 7, you're going to end up with de facto pretty much the council actually doing it. But I think it's very much a matter for you to decide what you think that core group should be, to make clear that you expect and anticipate there to be opportunities for involvement and engagement from other members of council, both on an ongoing basis where something doesn't have to be just that core group, and that you would like there to be clear and open forums, including informal meetings of the council on the big ticket items, or indeed on the direction of travel, because some of these discussions do need to be, if you like, informal, in order to be able to bring forward something which is coherent by way of thinking to the formal mechanisms of budget and policy, because whatever you do, it's going to come to budget and policy committee and to the council at that stage.
Councillor Parker, please.
I take on board quite a lot of what the town clerk's just said. I don't think it crosses over with what councillors Monroe and Moody said. And whilst that was going on, it occurred to me that a working group provides a safe place anyway. The word informal is in the recommendation anyway. I agree with the town clerk that in order to make a working group work, you have to limit the numbers somehow. And 7 is a usually good number as a maximum. But I like my colleagues here, I don't see any reason why the membership of that group shouldn't be drawn from the full council. So may I propose an amendment? I know it's been recommended, I think. I'll second it, therefore I'll move now an amendment that we say the Tavistock Town Council designate a working group comprised of up to 7 members of the council, and then the recommendation as it is.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a seconder for that proposed amendment, please? We do. Okay, thank you very much. Before we move on, I know the Deputy Mayor wanted to say something.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to endorse really what the town clerk has said, and having discussed this at some length at BNP, I mean, obviously what's coming over the horizon is a complete unknown. I liken it, as I would, to something that will pop up on the horizon when I'm looking out of the bridge of a warship. It's really important that we recognise what that thing is, and this is really what we're proposing. A body that can identify that object before it appears and have a reasonable idea of what we're going to do about it. So, because that's the case, I would describe the body that we're proposing as it's going to have to be agile, because we don't know how quickly these things are going to develop. We probably won't be able to wait for a formal scheduled meeting in the normal way of things. Therefore, I endorse really, as I said, what the town clerk has said, that in order to be agile, we also need to be light of foot. And really that, I think, is driving the town clerk's recommendation that we limit this to probably 7 people. So in that respect, I agree with Councillor Parker.
So you take the amended. Is it a substantive or is it an amendment to the substantive?
It's an amendment to the original motion, and if passed, it will become the substantive motion.
Okay, so we'll take the amendment to the motion as described by Councillor Parker, that we have a working group of up to 7 members drawn from the council. If this is successful and then we adopt the motion, we will seek nominations for the working group this evening. So just be thinking as you sit there whether this is something you are able and willing and keen to commit to. Because as the Deputy Mayor has said, it's going to have to be something where we can act swiftly when we need to. Councillor Parker.
Whilst I've got no problem with that in principle, I note that there are 2 members who I think would consider themselves useful members of a group like that, not present this evening. I wonder whether I would find a way of accommodating, at least allowing for that.
I'm advised that they can still be proposed from the members who are here this evening.
Thank you.
So let's vote on the amendment. All in favour, please show.
That is, I think, carried.
Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, if I can just do a double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yes, it's carried.
Okay, so that now becomes a substantive
It does, sir.
motion. In which case, let's call for people who would like to sit on this working group.
I'm not volunteering. I'm nominating Councillor Hutton.
I'm nominating Rob Hoppy.
The message is make sure you come to the meeting.
Ask for seconders as nominations come along as well, please.
Okay, we need. I'm advised that we need seconders for the nominations, please.
So,
Each one.
I propose.
and Councillor Munro seconded, I think. Yeah. Councillor Poppy proposed. Seconded, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bev Moody, what?
Could I propose Jeff Moody to be on the...
Oh, I've already...
So can I ask you to put your hands up if you're nominating yourself at the moment, then, please? Just glad we haven't got a note of all the names.
Yeah, I have.
Have you got everything?
Yeah. So far we've got Councillor Hutton, Councillor Poppy and Councillor Jeff Moody who have been proposed and seconded.
Okay, well, I propose me. Would any of you second?
Second.
Oh, you're so kind.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Please, sir. Please, sir.
So, and the Deputy Mayor is self-proposing? Yes, okay, thank you very much. Are you proposing yourself, Councillor Ewing?
I thought it might be quite useful.
You might have something useful to say.
I'll second Councillor Ewing.
I'll propose Councillor Johnson.
Councillor Johnson? I'll second Councillor Johnson. Who else? How many have we got? How many is that?
Right, so far we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They are Councillors Hutton, Poppy, Jeff Moody, Ward, Hipsey, Ewings and Johnson.
And I think, just thinking aloud, but Councillor Hutton and Councillor Poppy, it is of course subject to them agreeing to do it. If they decide they don't want to, we'll be chasing somebody else. Okay, thank you, members. I think that's been very helpful. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we move on to 283, a multi-use wheeled sports area, or MUSA as people seem to be calling it, not the skate park. So that's just of interest. 284, boundary trees and related matters. 285, heritage. And that concludes the open session items from BNP, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. So, going back to the main agenda now then. Item 9, Development Management and Licensing Committee, Tuesday the 28th of January. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to present the DMNL committee minutes from Tuesday the 28th of January. 289, apologies for absence. 290, confirmation of minutes. 291, declaration of interest. 292, Dartmoor National Park. 293, town planning issues. 294, general correspondence. 295, Tavistock Neighbourhood Development Plan. 296, urgent business brought forward at the discretion of the chairman. Mr. Mayor, I would ask that this was an item that had come through that we had to consider for a licence for Loungers UK Limited in Brook Street. The reason I ask about this is, as it was received too late, it was never advertised and we just pushed it in so we were there. Do we need to do a recommendation on this, or we just supported it so that our views were...
Yeah, because you're quite right. In normal circumstances, wherever it is possible, one would need to give the requisite number of days' notice. On this particular occasion, because the Development Management and Licensing Committee is authorised to respond for and on behalf of the Council in relation to licensing and certain types of planning applications, you are able to respond in relation to this, bearing in mind that it is a late item and it was not possible to have advertised it in advance, nor would it have been possible to have met the deadline for response had you dealt with it otherwise.
Thank you, Mr. Clark, on that case. So just to advise you, our decision was to support the application for that premises on there. 297, planning applications, little a, planning decisions, and little b, new planning applications. The recommendation is that the views of the Town Council as listed in Appendix B be passed to the local authority, planning authority, for consideration. I move that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's seconded. And all in favour, please show.
Carry.
Thank you.
Okay. The last one, 298, next meeting, and as always, it's Tuesday the 18th of February. Everyone is welcome.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, so now we move into items circulated for information. Item 10, service reports. Roman 1, General Manager's report. Do any of you have any questions for the General Manager? Councillor Ewing?
I have an update for him. The Guildhall toilets. As Councillor Moody knows, we had a meeting earlier this evening and the Chief Executive thought it was all done and dusted and that Tavistock Town Council were holding up the proceedings until I informed him otherwise. It will now be a top priority.
Thank you. And Councillor Mann, did you have your hand up? You did, yes.
I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the assistant to the town clerk for the event that was just like a welcome for the volunteers who worked on the mosaic. And that was a really painstaking project, taking off an entire mosaic and then relaying it. And I also just really wanted to say that missed out in the report are the two council employees, Ian and I think Andrew, both were involved in actually creating the beautiful frame that has replaced what was quite a ratty looking frame around the mosaic. The only question I had for the General Manager was, is there a way that we can protect the surface of the mosaic? I was opposed to that initially, but I've understood from West Devon Arts Workshops, Andy Cairns, that there's a possibility that the structure of it won't be, resistant to weather, and we could potentially prevent that as a council by putting some form of either cover over or something over the top. So.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mann. General Manager, is that something to think about outside this meeting?
Yeah, happy to look at it and have discussions with them.
Okay, thank you. And it's been suggested to me, General Manager, that it would be very nice if there was another little plaque on there with the refurbishment date, because I think at the moment it said it was constructed in, was it 1963 or something like that?
2006.
Well, I wasn't far off, and but it would be nice to have something on there to refer to the refurbishment. I think that would be great. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Smith, could you turn your microphone off, please? Could you turn your microphone? Thank you very much, because we were getting a bit of feedback then. Okay, good. Anything else for the General Manager? And is there anything you wanted to add, Wayne? No. Fine. So we then go on to the Panmure Market report, and I'm going to get in first and just say how thrilled I am that our Panmure Market has received national recognition. And I've said it in the paper, I've said it on Spotlight today. It's a credit to everybody involved. It's a credit to the market traders, to the market reeve, to the town council staff, to Wayne. I think it's fantastic news. It helps to put Tavistock on the map. We know that the market brings people into the town. Hopefully when they come into the town they'll spend money somewhere else. And I think to have something like that, which is such a superb commercial asset and a heritage asset as well, is really quite something. So heartfelt congratulations and thanks, particularly thanks to everybody who voted for them. Yeah. So, Panmure Market report. Anything else? So, moving on to Town Hall and Butchers Hall report. Deputy Mayor.
Just something that caught my eye on this one, Mr. Mayor, was the concern about trader cancellations, which is paragraph 2 under Butchers Hall. And it must be very frustrating when people say they're going to do this and then just don't rock up. And I can understand that concern. I was wondering if anybody had thought about a deposit scheme. I think it's probably a General Manager question. Is that a viable option to prevent people from doing that?
It primarily relates to the in-house events and the fact that generally the dates go out early part of the year and they pre-book for all the in-house events, and then we have a payment arrangement which usually is within 4 to 6 weeks of the event, where we try and secure payment because most traders won't be able to commit to 10 events in a year and paying up front. We have reviewed that payment policy and we're pulling it back by at least another month to actually get payments earlier in advance. But we are also taking more of a harder stance with, let's say, traders which are cancelling for less robust reasons.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on. And that brings us to item 11, Finance and Other Matters, report of the Assistant to the Town Clerk. Is there anything you wish to add, Jan?
No, I don't think so.
So the next major event... Councillor Parker?
I missed the opportunity to ask the Assistant to the Town Clerk on the minutes, but the last time's minutes you reported that you were chasing up the failure, I'm going to call it the failure, of the Borough Council to take on board and to record the Town Council's comments on planning applications. Is there any update on that, please?
I believe I forwarded the response I initially received to you all. I've not had a further response, I'm afraid. I did go back again, explaining that it wasn't a one-off, and I'm still awaiting a response.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ewings?
And just to let you know, I followed that up as well, and I haven't had a response yet either.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to remind you that on Friday, the 11th of April, we have the Civic Ball. The invitations for that will be going out fairly soon. Please consider going. It's a good evening. And when you come, make sure your pockets are deep, because it's an opportunity to raise money for the Tavistock Youth Cafe. So it's a good evening's entertainment, and it's in a good cause. So do please try to come to that. Are there any other comments? So take next the West Devon Borough Council report. It's very nice to see you here, Councillor Greenbury-Pullen. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your report, which personally I must say I found to be very informative, particularly your comments about South West Water, which I thought were priceless, really, and not very encouraging, mind. We can invite questions, can't we? Yes. Yeah. So, do you have anything you wish to add to your report?
Only that it's extremely nice to be here, layman's terms, but it's a pleasure to meet people. I haven't met everybody before, but I think getting to know each other and looking at how we can work together and share information where appropriate is a real asset to the area. So I'm pleased you appreciated the report. I wasn't quite sure to what extent you wanted detail or what detail I could give, so if there's anything you'd like to know, I'm more than happy to answer where I can, and if I can't, then of course I'll get the answers for you.
Thank you. Just do any of you have any questions for Councillor Greenbury-Pullen, please? Councillor Parker.
Given the interest that this council has had in the premises, could we hear a little more, perhaps, about the plans for Spring Hill?
All I can tell you is that currently Spring Hill is likely to be completed any time now, actually, within days. It's offering temporary accommodation. Are we talking, sorry, yeah, I might be at cross purposes with you.
There's two properties on Spring Hill. Just to clarify, there's a house at the top of Spring Hill which also belongs to West Devon. It is not the Spring Hill accommodation that was proposed to become a new accommodation previously that she's referring to, and that has been converted back into accommodation for homeless, and that is what is nearing completion.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I can't tell you about the other properties, so apologies.
Okay. Are there any other questions, please? Councillor Mann?
There aren't, but you mentioned something that was of two great things that were of importance to me, one of which is to do with West Devon CVS. I don't know if everyone knows, but I have been a trustee with West Devon CVS for over a year, and what I can report is that we have managed to make an offer, and it has been accepted for a new CEO. I cannot tell you the name because we have to go through the referencing process, but it's very exciting. And we also have a couple of new trustees since this report came out, so that's quite good news. So watch this space and I will keep you informed. And then the other thing is that Councillor Greenbury-Pullen has been one of the people that has really highlighted special education need, disability problems that have been across the whole of Devon. And I know that that's something that I would be really interested to hear more about. So if you have just any updates, because I think there was some recent news.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Yes, so Devon County Council has actually been taken to court under the judicial review process. One family locally within the county has found that the process they feel is in breach of legalities and legislation. The cases have now been heard. The processes for the application to be authorised by the High Court, that happened and was granted. As I say, the cases were heard last week and the judgment will follow shortly. Fundamentally, the issue is, for those of you who aren't up to speed, we have in Devon approximately 9,000 children who have special educational needs or disabilities. We have a severe lack of facilities educationally appropriate for those children. And we have a potential 20,000 additional children likely to be waiting for or requiring imminently, and some in significant more time scales than would be acceptable, a diagnosis. What that actually means in real terms is that the education system is not meeting the needs of many of our children. Devon County has been criticised for overspending and being in deficit for over 160 million in this particular area of SEND. I would personally rephrase that as being underfunded by over 160 million. The previous government introduced a process called the safety valve, and that is a process whereby if the county cuts expenditure and funding on children's services, specifically SEND, then they would be rewarded with a lump sum initially of 95 million. Now, Devon has actually broadcast that as being additional funding of 95 million. It went out in Devon's newsletter in the last week. It's actually, in real terms, equates to a significant underfund of services. Our future is our children and our youth, and it doesn't just affect the children and the youth. It affects the families that are supporting those children. It affects the distances that occasionally families have to travel to take their children to school if they have what's been noted in the press as the golden ticket. The local education authority 0 to 25 team are failing abysmally in many cases to deliver the appropriate level of support, recognition and provision to these families. Many families are enforced into a tribunal process which can take upwards of a year. That will cost them quite significant amounts of money. I know families who are paying £10,000–15,000 to go through that process. Over 95% of families that are applying for the EHCP, an Educational Health and Care Plan, to be issued, are actually winning at tribunal level. Approximately the same percentage are also going through, a number of people are also going through the process to have the provision authorised by the county, and approximately the same percentage on a national figure are being awarded wins by the tribunal on the provision that is required. Now, I perceive and I am engaged in numerous organisations who are involved in this, and I feel very strongly that there is a significant financial wastage, and there is also a significant lack of understanding. And on a personal note, I'd finish by saying I think it is wholly unethical, immoral and inappropriate for any county to deny a child with additional needs, be that autism, severe trauma, or any other physical disability or less typical need, the right to their education under the Education Act, the Children and Family Act, and also the Equality Act. And currently, this is the situation we're in. It's on the news regularly, and it's forecasted to become worse.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Parker.
Can I thank you for that update, and can I express my disappointment that we've had to hear that from a member of West Devon Borough Council rather than a member of Devon County Council.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Let's move on. So 11C, update from questions to council representatives serving on outside bodies. Does anyone have anything to report? Yes, please. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're no doubt aware, I am your rep on the bid board. And obviously our concern is businesses within Tavistock, and particularly the High Street. It has to be said that the bid at the moment is very, very concerned about the state of the High Street and the number of empty windows that we see in Duke Street, West Street, Brook Street, etc. Things are changing from day to day, but the general trend appears to be towards more and more empty premises. The amber lights are definitely flashing on the bid board at the moment, and with a view to trying to at least identify the problem and hopefully do something that might alleviate things. A group of people have got together and made initial contact to address this problem. So the first meeting occurred just recently between the Town Council, the bid, and our local MP. And really the idea was just to kick the idea around, see where we can go next. I think we generally agree that the very first thing is to actually obtain some objective evidence that there is a problem. It's difficult to do something about a problem that you can't prove is actually there. So some work has been done in that respect. And then, of course, the next thing is to have a look at potential possible, not solutions, but at least measures that might alleviate things. I'm, delighted, as everybody else is, to hear about the NABMA Pannier Market Award. Things like that are small in the great scheme of things, but they, as the Mayor pointed out, these things do bring visitors to Tavistock, but it's not just visitors that we need to be concerned about. I think one of my particular concerns is that the town's growing very rapidly. We have lots of new developments, let's face it, on the edge of town. And, I do have concerns that the people that are moving into Tavistock, into the new developments, may not appreciate the beauty and value that we have right under our noses. So that may be one of the things that we look at. Other suggestions were that we just need to get the town of Tavistock on the map. I've said this before, but people talk about Tavistock as being a hidden gem. Well, it's definitely a gem, but it shouldn't be hidden. Maybe we can do something about that in terms of promotion of get some events here, get a brown sign on the A30 up there, Tavistock this way. It's a great place. Come and spend some money. I don't know. Anyway, so I just thought I'd report that this is a concern with the bid, and action is being taken, albeit initial and fairly quietly at the moment, but we shall see how this moves on.
Councillor Moody and then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Councillor Hipsey. That's quite a report about the state of how the bid are concerning Tavistock. A few years ago, I can't remember, it must have been probably 5-6 years ago, West Devon used to, the community committee, I think, commissioned sort of a biannual report of the state of the High Street. Yeah. It was called Tavistock Benchmarking, and I've got an old copy at home. But I'm just wondering whether through bid or through Town Council, maybe the lead member for the economy, who's Councillor Jory, might be approached to see how that West Devon could look at reviving that survey that was done. It was a really helpful survey. It went into great depth, looked at all the shops in town, the footfall, the car parking, everything. And it was a good basis onto which we could build the economy. Also, something that was whispered into my ear some time ago was about the Portus pilot, which is something which is ancient history now. But is it worthwhile resurrecting that, or just looking at it? Are there some ideas, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, can we look at other suggestions? This Portus pilot was quite comprehensive, and I'm just wondering whether there might be something in that could help. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Moody. Very useful suggestions. I'm aware of the report that you've spoken of, and the bid has actually got that as part of their armoury, if you wish. I would also point out that Councillor Jory from West Devon is also a bid member. So we do have that buy-in, that link, if you like. So that's a good thing. We haven't yet had any real interest shown from Devon County Council, but that is obviously something we need as well. A bit along the lines that Councillor Parker was saying just there. And the Portus reference, the bid manager, who is, let's face it, absolutely passionate about this subject, has sought the advice from another chap whose name completely has gone. I think his name's Terry Green, and I can't remember his background, but he's effectively the Mary Portas of 2024. So we do have that that sort of advice coming in as well from elsewhere, from professionals elsewhere. So the plan, if you like, is a bit amorphous at the moment, but is to try and bring all these people in, bring them in, get some ideas, and see what we can do. We can make happen, if you like. But it's very, very early days. I think the first thing, as I said, really is to actually just establish what the problem is. One of the other threads of that work, if you like, is it's very difficult to compare Tavistock with other towns objectively. And you know, the obvious one that usually comes to mind is Totnes. It would be good, I think, to be able to do that, to see how we're faring compared to other places. My personal opinion is actually we are not that bad compared to a lot of places, and you know, you obviously got your own opinions, but we need to prove it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parker.
I rise to make 2 points, one about this discussion, and then I have a report of my own to make. The benchmarking surveys, you're quite right, Jeff, they were done every 2 years, but they were done for both Tavistock and Oakhampton. They were part funded, mostly funded by the Borough Council, and they covered not just, they covered a quantitative analysis, land use changes, vacancies, changes in floor space, changes in turnover, all the sorts of things that a town centre management team would help them, and it compared that over time. Doing it every 2 years gives you an idea over time of how a town centre is.
We started that.
Yeah. The second thing is it also included opinion surveys. So it got a good flavour, it gave a good flavour of how the town was performing for its visitors. But as part of it, it also compared the performance of Tavistock and Oakhampton with comparable towns across the whole country. So it did what you were doing, what you were suggesting as well. My own view is that it was a sad day when we missed the first 2-year survey, and we've never picked it up since. I think that is something that we should and could make really good use of. Can I move on to I have a report at last for the Dartmoor Common Owners Association. I attended the meeting on January 21st, and there are 4 things that affected, I think these members would be interested in. First is the new Dartmoor land, oh, Wayne's gone. Shame. The Dartmoor Land Use Management Group has appointed a new chairman, Phil Stocker, and the task is to implement the 38 recommendations of the Dartmoor Review Panel, which reported in November 2023. It's about the use of various types of landscape and land use across Dartmoor. Now, I'm sure that everybody is familiar with the 38 recommendations, but I have them on the laptop if you want me to read them out. I think we'll pass that. The second is we're still waiting for a decision on Alexander Darnell's challenge to wild camping rights on Dartmoor. That one is still with the courts. The National Park reported that following the proposed closure of the Princetown Visitor Centre, they've been working with 2 of the major towns on the edge of Dartmoor to develop visitor centres. They pointed out that these are important towns with good access to Dartmoor, good rail access, growing populations and a strong tourist tradition. It wouldn't surprise you to hear that those 2 are Oakhampton and Ivybridge. I pointed out that apart from rail access, Tavistock is the equal, if not the better, than either of those. I was told that the NPA had tried to contact those responsible for heritage in Tavistock unsuccessfully. I agreed that I'd work with the town council, the town clerk rather, and the general manager to facilitate a meeting, that they are interested in working with us on the visitor centre. And finally, they're still waiting to hear from their lawyers about whether the revised bylaws, proposed revised bylaws, still need to be subject to further public participation, consultation. It's a difficult one, that, because it created such a furore last time round. I suspect, I get the feeling that there's a certain reticence to go out to the public again. And just finally, I've been to 3 of those meetings now. I'm at a disadvantage, and I suspect any member would be at a disadvantage, because the meeting is made up with land managers and agents and owners, people who know their land intimately, and speak from the basis of day-to-day involvement from the ground up. And I'm happy to continue to represent the council, but it does seem to me that it's worth thinking. It's only 4 meetings a year, but it's worth thinking whether one of our senior officers who know the ground, what's happening on the ground better than a member would, whether an officer would be a better representative of this council at that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker. I'm interested in your comments about towns and the moor. One of the things that strikes me about Tavistock is that we don't make enough of being adjacent to the western edge of the moor. You could come to the town and be blissfully unaware of it, apart from these hills that pop up in the background.
Yeah, I made the point very strongly that we are, of all of the towns that they mentioned, we are the one that faces both ways. We face the World Heritage Site and the AON National Landscape, and we face the Dartmoor as well. We are unique in that.
And we get all the rain.
I think Oakhampton gets their fair share. It's not called Southampton for nothing. So, Councillor Greenbury-Pullen, I think you wanted to chip in, did you?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to feedback, if you don't mind, on the issue around closing the Dartmoor National Park Visitor Centre. I've been involved in a number of the meetings with the residents and the national park as well as the duchy. And I think I think we're being fed an injustice. I think I live in Princetown actually. Data and numbers and footfall is used as one of the determining factors of the success of the centre. And the approximate figures quoted is that Postbridge is recognising approximately 50,000 people a year. 70,000, I beg your pardon, and that Princetown was recognising 50. One of the biggest issues is that, in my opinion, and I think that of many residents, is that actually the coaches that used to come to Princetown are now being directed to Postbridge. And under the access, don't quote me, I believe it's the Access to Countryside and National Park Act 49, there is a legal obligation for the National Park to deliver education in a couple of different specific areas around heritage and ecology, as well as to be supportive of local business and local residents. I feel it's a great injustice that when the National Park has had use of a building for 30 years at peppercorn rent of £100 a year, and are faced with a management bill that seems on an annual basis excessive, that it's now being looked at being closed when there are so many local businesses and individuals from Tavistock that work and travel up there on a regular basis. So I think there has to be significantly more depth and inquiry into this, and I want to know more about the National Park's, what I believe, failure in supporting Princetown in the way it should be supported, including the residents, the businesses, and the huge opportunities that centre, that building and that environment has on offer for local people, which is not being maximised anywhere near its potential. There is a reprieve of 6 months currently. There was an option for 12. That still is shorter than the actual lease expiry date. I don't think the costings add up. I don't think the reasonings add up, and I find it unbelievable that we can be sending our visitors to an environment in coach loads that does not equate to what the village actually has to offer, especially as now the prison museum's closed. We have the centre, the community centre is not functioning to its best. So I think there are a lot of questions to be asking and a lot of people to be considered and consulted, and I don't think this should rest in silence.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on. Item 12, communications from the Mayor, I have none. And item 13, urgent matters, I have none. So in the absence of Councillor Ewing, I'm going to propose